Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports as the Sharks take on Leinster, the game of the weekend. And whilst it might not be Leinster's best team, there are still plenty of Irish internationals and a very good Leinster side, which are going to be taking on a pretty stacked Sharks side as well, which also sees the return of Apple FASSI, who after injury is named in the starting lineup for the Sharks up against the current log leaders and favourites for the competition. So very much a good acid test to see where the Sharks are right now, because it's a game with Leinster having left a couple of their big players behind. The Sharks would be expected to win, because if they can't beat what's not necessarily a second string Leinster side, but not definitely not their first, they don't have that much chance against their first. That kind of sort of logic there. So it should be quite an interesting clash. It is down in Durban, obviously going to be very wet conditions. We've seen all the rain and stuff like that and what it's doing to KwaZulu-Natal. So I hope this will be a bit of a relief, and hopefully the rain does stay away for a bit. But expect the ground to be quite wet underfoot because of all the rain over the last few weeks. Before we look at the size, please do smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. In terms of the Sharks side, it's a very good Sharks side, and it's a very big Sharks side. And I think that's quite important, because there's now a sort of growing idea that the way to beat Leinster is to beat their tight five, is to pitch up front, to be physical, to get over the advantage line and nullify their entire sort of team really, and their strategy by just sort of brute force. And you look at the pack that the Sharks have picked, and going with the 6-2 split once again, like they did against the Lions, not a new thing for them. Um, it's very much a very physical pack. You've got Oxenchair, Bongi, Manambi, and Thomas the Toy. It's a very good front row. It's a Springbok front row. It's a front row on form. You then have the giant of LaRue Root starting next to Cabran Krobler, who's also not a small player by any means. So it's a very large tight five. And that is then complemented by the likes of Sia Khaleesi, Henko Fenton, Pepsi Buthelezi. None of them are particularly small themselves. So it's a very big Sharks pack. And I think that is going to be an area where they're going to try and beat the Leinster up front. And sort of, especially it's going to be quite tight, play, that sort of 8-man rugby basically, where you just sort of playing everything off nine with a couple of pods of forwards in around the park, and then you got bringing the boot of Curran Bosch, Jaden Henderson, both very good tactical kickers. Curran Bosch still preferred. A lot of people are quite critical of him. I feel like he has gotten better in the last couple of weeks. Maybe still hasn't quite sort of reached the peaks that we want to see him at, but there's no doubt that he is improving. Then you got Michael Solomon Pimpy, Werner Koch, who are they're workers. They're workers. And this is what I'm saying. Marius Lowe, Ben Tapuayu are players who will run crash ball each day. So it's a team that's very much picked to play quite a tight game. But then you've got Apple FASSI, who can, if there is space, really exploit it. He's very good in the counter attack. He's got a nice boot on him. And he's now sort of got a bit of a race of time. He's got a couple of round fixtures here to try and put himself back on the Springbok radar, because he was playing very well. Now he's missed a couple of weeks through injury. He now needs to hit the ground running. Off the bench, Kieran van Vuren into Tukum Kunu, Kutum Kunu, Rino Hugo, Jean-Louis Labaskakni, and Sikamboze Noche. As we said, a 6-2 split there, and then Grant Williams and Buddha Chamberlain. I think you get to Curtin Bosch, the comes in, the fact that he can play at fly half and fullback. Even Werner Koch, can also play at centre. It really helps to have those players that can play in different positions. I play the fast can move on to the wing if he has to, which is what allows a 6-2 split in any team, and in this case, the Sharks. For Leinster, this is how they will line up. Again, not completely stacked. They're missing a lot of players. Somebody like Josh van der Flair, somebody I would really like to have seen play. And amongst the hundreds of their others, there are so many of them that are missing, but it's still a very good Leinster side. So if we're looking up front, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, and Thomas Clarkson, very interested to see how those three handle that front row. Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher are world class. Then off the bench, John McKee, Peter Dooley, and Michael Alalatoa, I think they'll probably actually have the upper hand of the Sharks second front row. In the second row, Brian Deeney and Jack Dunn. Then Reece Ruddock will captain the side for number 6, and he's very much Captain Courageous, isn't he? He really is a heart in his sleeve. He leads from the front. He puts his body on the line type of player, and when he's playing well, he really does lift the rest of the players around him. And those will be the likes of Scott Penny and Max Deegan, who complete that loose trio. Nick McCarthy is partnered with Harry Byrne in the midfield. Rory O'Loughlin, Tommy O'Brien, and Chris Cosgrave are the back three, and then Kieran Frawley and Jamie Osborne are in the centres. Off the bench, John McKee, Peter Dooley, Michael Alalatoa, as we mentioned. Then Josh Murphy, Alex Soroka, Cormac Foley, David Hawkshaw, and Martin Maloney. So missing a lot of the Irish stars, but it's a good Leinster side. And I think that if they can get it right, they can beat the Sharks side, who have sometimes been quite hit and miss. They haven't quite always fired on all cylinders, has the Sharks side throughout the season. They've been quite inconsistent. So it really does sort of depend on which Sharks side actually does pitch up in terms of the result. But in theory, the Sharks will be going into the side as favourites because of the weakened Leinster side that they are fielding. On that note, I don't think there's anything wrong with what they've done. I think it's the reality of having to play different competitions and having to try and compete in all fronts. We've seen that in the Currie Cup, how some teams haven't been able to field their best sides in Currie Cup levels. So you can't then watch Currie Cup, see how the Sharks aren't putting their best side out every weekend, whilst, for example, like the Bulls are fielding very strong sides, and then complain that Leinster are sending out a weakened side when they're a side that sits very comfortably on top of the URC log, and are currently playing in the European Champions Cup. They've got 10 points on the top of the log. So they don't need these two games. I mean, obviously, if they were to lose both games and not get a single point, and Ulster and Glasgow were to get 2 bonus point victories, they could suddenly drop down to being tied third. But if they could just pick up 1 point over the next 2 weekends, they'll still be first. I think that's the point. They're very conscious of the fact. So it makes sense for them to be able to leave a couple players behind, keep them nice and fresh for the run-up, because they're going to be Champions Cup, there's going to be the URC playoffs, they're going to want to try and compete on all fronts. And as a result, they've had to make those tough decisions, and that's the reality. And what will be interesting is to see how the South African sides manage to do that next season when they are potentially also in other competitions as well. Please do smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. You'll be live for this game tomorrow. We'll be live for all the South African games. So do come and join me over the weekend as we watch some rugby and get back into the URC. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.